Getting thrown to the wolves is like, within, certain reason, not to be like totally irresponsible.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But when you just have to do something, it's usually, but you see what I mean? That's the correlation to being like broken down on the road or this happens, that happens. It's like, you're forced with reality, and it's you have to conquer it and figure it out.
From the cubicle to the lab, the studio to the war room, climbing the corporate ladder, or joining a scrappy startup, experience a day in the life of the jobs you want. This is the Experience a Diddle podcast.
We interview professionals, entrepreneurs, and recent grads to inspire you to gain experience beyond the classroom and launch a career of your own.
We're your hosts, Krista Bowe
and Matt Poe.
Welcome to part 2 of the Generational Marketing Series with youth brand and marketing strategist Gregg Witt. In part 1 of this series, we experience a day in the life, hour by hour in his role, so you can hear for yourself if that's a career you could see yourself doing. We also talked about the origin story of his book, The Gen Z Frequency, which is out now, so definitely grab yourself a copy. The link is in the show notes at experienceadiddle.com. We covered a lot of ground in part 1, so if you haven't listened to it yet, be sure you do. It's the episode titled A Diddle in this series. Now, in this experience episode, we're going to reminisce with Gregg on some good times with good times. Gregg's skateboarding company and brand he started when he was 16 years old. Then we're going to find out what experience he's had since then at prestigious companies and brands that have given him the right to call himself a youth brand and marketing specialist. You can learn from his experience so one day you can be one too. Let's jump right in.
You started as a teenager, your entrepreneurial journey, right?
Yeah.
You weren't even in college yet.
Shit, dude, talking about late 80s now. We're going way back. Oh, yeah. Here we go. But yeah, I just started a company just because I just felt like there was a lot of areas underserved. And it was called Good Times. And then like some of the like older mentors that got involved with us in the company, they were like, yeah, everyone parties so hard. Like, just let's be taken seriously. Let's throw this kind of nerdy angle in. It will be called the Good Times Intelligence Agency. And that'll be like the name of our company. And people think we're kind of weird. But then when like we show up, even though we're pretty much going to party harder than anyone else, like they're going to have this like level of like taking us serious. Like a few years later, though, like I parted ways with those mentors and really started like running the whole thing by myself. And I was like, screw this intelligence agency shit. Went back to Good Times.
He was running Good Times well before college, and when he got to college, balancing school and a company wasn't easy. He was very successful at running a global brand at such a young age, and looking back, Gregg realizes he did not appreciate his education as much as he should have.
And this is some good advice to young people, because I think we were pretty successful relatively quick. And so I just sort of felt that like I knew what was up. And I didn't really need to hear like teachers. I didn't need anybody really telling me like how to do business. I felt like I should teach them how to do international business. I had 70 distributors worldwide. I had $80,000 in revenue in a month. And I don't need somebody telling me something that's at the time even I thought antiquated advice, much less like look down on me. I mean, I remember like walking out of like certain math classes and just being like, just dropped the books on the floor and like left. A lot of that was arrogance too. It's like, because every type of opportunity that you have or we have to learn is a good one. It's just my story. Like, I'm not a promoter of the renegade, like don't go to school. And, it's like, just depends on what your work, life, mission, need, is. So I don't try to like glamorize this crazy stories. I mean, I gotta say, I think the number one thing that I learned the most was interesting, because we were always on the road and traveling. We were doing skateboarding demonstrations. I guess you'd call it servicing our retailers to help sell through the product. But at the point we were just going out to create havoc. But when you're on the road, like shit never went good. Like never went right. It never went as planned. It went good, but it never went as planned. So, you're like, oh, we threw a rod in the van. The engine's gone. No cell phone. what do you do,
Right.
buddy? And it's like all of a sudden, you know, you got a lot of time on your hands to learn some life lessons and to try to figure out, you know, like, Mom, what am I doing? And the best story too is like, I remember one time we brought in like 500 to 1,000 of these decks or sweatshirts and a bunch of stuff. And one day there was like shelves filled, but tons of stuff. And then all of a sudden, like the shipping guy came and all of a sudden it's like 7 days later and there's no more products on the shelf. I remember sitting there going, well, shit, now what do we do? Oh, now we have to learn a lesson in inventory control. So now we're like, we actually have created an amazing problem, but now like we have to go back and go, oh, wait, so I guess we have to like order this stuff again?
Right.
When you're 17 or 18, you just say, oh, well, like go order the same number again.
Right.
That made tons of sense.
Right.
Shit, that paid for a whole entire European trip for 5 weeks and some. And then all of a sudden you buy like the same amount and all the shops start telling you like, yeah, we want the new stuff. And you're like, oh shit. Yeah, I guess so. And then one of my business partners at the time, Graham Stanners, this Scottish dude, Scottish ex-pro skateboarder, is a super rad guy. Like he had this big list of accounts across the country. And this is like when all that product came back in. And I was like, what do we do now? And he like just takes this big list and he sends me this list. It's like freaking, I don't know, dude. It's like half a foot tall of this list. And he's like, drops it on the ground in front of me. And he's all, pick up the phone and start calling these people. And we got like 5,000 shops you can be calling. So I'm like, oh yeah, that makes total sense, you know? And I'm thinking, yeah, that's cool. And like, there's no one else. And I pick up the phone and I'm like, calling the first one. I'm like, hi, my name is God. And I start freaking out. I'm like, what the hell, dude? This is nuts. I'm like, what do you even say when you call someone to like sell them this shit? Yeah. I was like, anyways, that was my sales 101.
It's a cold calling lesson.
Cold calling 101. Like I'm just in a dark garage. I mean,
but I love that you're opening up about just telling us about this, just because we want to encourage our students to just kind of like throw themselves into the fire of whatever passion that they want to pursue. And that's like the best way to learn and the best way to grow as a professional.
I agree with you completely. Like getting thrown to the wolves is like, you know, within, you know, certain reason, you know, not to be like totally irresponsible.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But when you just have to do something, it's usually... But you see what I mean? That's the correlation to being like broken down on the road or this happens, that happens. It's like you're forced with reality and it's just, you have to conquer it and figure it out.
One thing you can take away from Gregg's entrepreneurship is the importance of balancing knowledge you learn from school and knowledge you learn from people and actually doing the work in the real world. College may not be for everyone, but if you're in college, don't rely solely on learning from textbooks and lectures. And if you're not in college, it's important to learn the foundations. Meeting people and actually doing things in tandem with your classes will be so rewarding for you in the long run in terms of your career.
Gregg was recruited to work on brand activation and marketing for boutique footwear companies before he started his own consultancy turned agency called Premise. Premise worked with brands to help build positive connections between brands and youth, a lot like what he does today.
And I was running Sense and later running Era footwear. That's when Nike came in, Nike SB came in and really figured out the skateboarding, like lifestyle fashion shoe and put those footwear brands and many other boutique footwear brands all out of business. I went again to reinvent myself, started consulting with companies. I started consulting with Glasso Vitamin Water. I was doing some action sports, youth and family services programs for the U.S. military. And then I started working with Landscape Structures on kids, youth product lines. And while I was in one of those, you know, consulting meetings, the chairman and inventor of the modern playground at Landscape Structures looks over the table at me and he's like, well, you and your team I had some people working with me. You're our consultants. And I was like, oh, I'm a consultant.
Sweet.
I'm like, cool. I just thought I worked with some companies.
That sounds so official. Yeah,
but that was like, okay, you know, where do we put these checks from these various companies? We put that into Premise. Long story short, it's evolved into a youth marketing agency.
Gotcha.
Premise.
Right. Okay.
And we felt what we did, which is, I think, almost like some of the same sauce of today, is just immersion.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, this is immersive marketing. This is grassroots meets, at the time, like MySpace.
Right.
Meets events, meets, different tools, different times, same shit that we're doing now.
Gregg wanted to develop his personal brand and build credibility in the space of consumer insights and strategy, so he started a professional youth market consultancy called Think with Wit. Through that, he was booking speaking engagements and workshops with emphasis on fostering Gen Z and brand relationships.
Think with Wit was always it's just me. Right now it's like way more active because there's like a book site around it. And there's more like, okay, here's who I am.
Right.
Like, why should you give a shit about anything I'm saying, right? But it's more of just like my personal brand. Like, honestly, it's been me. It's been around a long time because it's me. But I've just finally kind of like right before the book, just kind of took my personal brand more seriously. Working on your own stuff is hard, but it's super important, because it's like you have to practice what you preach. You have to stand out in a sea of not necessarily sameness, but in a sea of just a lot of stuff. And people have to almost just know you're serious about any of these things that we do. Like, okay, being just on social enough, it's not enough. You need to have some kind of home base.
Keep in mind, at this point in his career, he was working on project after project after project, bouncing between different companies and offering his expertise in marketing and strategy. He worked at Vitamin Water, now owned by Coca-Cola, as an influencer ambassador marketing consultant for the West Coast operations team.
Then it was just being hungry. Every agency, every quote unquote consultant, because then I figured there was thousands of those people out there, just were trying to get money from Glasso Vitamin Water because all of a sudden it came out and it was super hot. And the main thing that we just worked on was different strategies that was what we had was water drops.
What do you mean by water drops exactly?
Water drops is delivering. Thank you. I'm full of this jargon. So it's just delivering water to someone.
Okay.
Yeah. Water drop. And water, influencer marketing, ambassador marketing was just kind of at its truth, its core root. What does that word mean? It's get product in the hands of the right people who actually really like it. But I think what was unique about everything with Vitamin Water is that we were going, we were not, everyone was asking for money and we were just completely avoiding those people.
Who was asking for money?
Any athlete, any musician, any artist. There was this whole group of big name people that were going, yeah, I want you to bring that over. I want to do a deal with you guys. Will you talk to my manager? Will you, this is how much I would cost. And our philosophy was hey, thank you so much. As a matter of fact. And we just there was a van or a couple vans and we'd just be okay, yeah, the person that wanted money would basically, sure, we'll just drop this water off for you. Let us know if you need anything. But we would just totally avoid those people. And then we would just go to all these other people who were just people like 50 Cent and Jennifer Aniston and Tony Hawk were hey, will you bring this over? Don't even tell anyone. I just love this stuff. And then 50 Cent obviously was tell him, I'll tell everyone.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
And, not a deal.
No charge.
Not a deal.
Yeah.
It wasn't a deal. None of those were deals.
Right.
Those are real legit. That was a cool experience because it was hey, Tony Hawk's hey, I want to send some stuff over to my house, just I don't want to promote it too much because it's years later. He won't kill me right now. It's this guy's endorsed by Milk.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not that, we can't be promoting the Vitamin Water deal, but yeah. Man, I want this stuff. And this is hundreds of stories like that. And it was effective, and then really everything else was just scaling these water drops and limiting how many of those water drops you gave. But it was mostly just you're with your crew. That will influence a circle, which a smaller circle of true word of mouth. The actual in real world kind.
That is pure influence.
Just pure,
yeah, for sure.
Pure real deal. Still works plenty good today, but it would sell through. Mm-hmm. And that blocking and tackling, and I mean that's it. There's nothing else. There's no other budget.
Yeah.
Because in New York, just to put context, which we didn't say, this was like, west of the Mississippi stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then New York would do billboards and shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like in New York, it was like cool, like all the way back to probably day one, it was check this out. No, west of Mississippi, water drops, my friend.
I kind of want to go back a little bit. You mentioned your work with Landscape Structures.
Mm-hmm.
That's a playground company, right?
Yeah.
Can you give an example of what they would come to you for? Like what they would ask you to help work on? 'Cause that sounds like it'd be really fun. Like,
Man, honestly, it was probably one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life. I get a call. My friend, Matt, this crazy kid. I can't remember how old he was, but he was like, "This is company, Landscape Structures. They're building a skate park line. And for cities all across the world, they're like mega millionaires. They've got this like Willy Wonka factory. And like, they're in Minnesota, man." And like, I don't even know what he's saying. Like, I can't even. He just knew that I ran companies and like I was this marketing guy and I knew like athletes and artists and musicians, like all this other stuff. And he's like, "You need to come here and meet these guys." I'm just like, dude, this was like right after I licensed my skateboard brand, but it basically let all that die to go to footwear,
right.
to make more real money. Then all that die, completely like rise like so high, making the most money you've ever made in your life to just be a non-existent boutique industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, so a little vitamin water, a little bit of this, a little bit, like just cobbling these
Right.
projects together, basically.
Definitely.
And I get on I'm a phone conference, I'm smart enough to know, let's do a phone conference, like figure out what?
Right.
Like, what are we talking about?
Right.
Like, because my friend Matt's like not lying. I mean, he just doesn't know how to articulate. And I don't know what he's saying. He's going to kill me when he hears this, but he knows it's true. Like, I mean, we were both nut jobs, but he was just like crazier. And so I get on the phone and they're like, "No, but we are launching a global skate park brand. It's going to be sort of, fabricated, like the fabricated housing industry. And, we're going to build these because the cities and government entities across the world have been asking us to make this. Like, this is a very state-of-the-art operation." And they wanted me to come in and I was like, "Yeah, it's cool." And I went in there, and the funniest part about the story is I go to their factory and meet them. And you can kind of imagine from meeting me now and knowing my persona today versus thinking how I was like 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, I had a dirty shirt on. My shoes were like destroyed from skateboarding. Like, I didn't have like other shoes. I was like, "You want to fucking work with me? Like, this is who I am. Like, you got a problem? Like,
Right.
fuck off.
Totally.
I don't care.
Right.
This is what I do." And so my friend Matt's like, interestingly, my friend Matt's like, "You have to wear a suit when you come to meet these guys." Apparently he always wears a suit when he goes there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Matt, I'm not wearing a
I'm not
suit,
doing
dude.
that."
I have a suit from this funeral from my freaking grandmother. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
that's the only suit I've ever owned.
It's not you. It's
And
not,
he's
yeah.
like, "No, dude, I'm serious. Like, did you hear those people? They're serious." And I'm like, "Oh man, he's right. This is like, these guys are serious. This is a real serious thing." And all right, dude, I'm wearing the suit. I'm wearing the suit because of you. I respect you. Like, this suit shit's dumb. And I'm wearing the suit. I go to have this meeting. Incredible. Like, going through this whole tour. Basically, I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, Matt. Like, wow, what did you just be? This is pretty amazing. Like, this company is freaking other level." Long story short, everything goes good. We're getting ready to do this deal. In the end, the two like co-founders, Barb and Steve King, they come in the room, they're like, "Hey, everyone's really impressed. Like, you really understood like what we need to do with our product, like where we need to kind of modify where our brand goes. Things that we've been working on for a couple of years that we could never even figure out. You really like hit the nail on the head. But there's a question that we have. I've been traveling all around the country, well, the world, but I've been traveling all over the country, going to these skate parks and talking to people. And I met some people that are really intelligent designers and people that know what's going on. They're even like professionals in that industry. But I've never, ever seen anybody wearing a suit."
Oh my God.
Not impressive.
So he's like, "You got me there with the whole suit thing."
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you,
I
Matt.
freaking ripped that suit off. And I'm like, "Oh, you don't even know this guy right here, man. He's telling me I have to wear a suit for like 2 weeks before coming here. And I'm like, oh, thank God.
After that, did you wear
Oh,
your
God,
t-shirt?
no,
Oh, no
man.
way.
No, dude. They
So
were
you
laughing so hard. And it was, but the only reason like I say that is there is a time for a suit, but I think the key principle is to be yourself.
After 10 plus years working with clients through Premise, Gregg partnered with Parker White Brand to create a new agency called Immersive Youth Marketing, a youth marketing agency with the mission of cultivating brand relevance with young people. But it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine, if that's what you're thinking. It was another one of those throw yourself into the fire and hope you don't get burned situations.
But I spent a year just basically just like going, well, what am I doing?
Mm.
And then I spent a year just going like, do I even do this
Interesting.
work? I don't even know what I do anymore. You
Yeah.
know? And then somebody was like, yeah, you need to submit on this bid. And I was like, oh, submit on a bid? I'm pretty much just okay being broke right now. I don't know. Like I'm trying to figure it out. But I submitted on this deal and I was like, well, shit, man. I mean, I don't really have a team.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
Mhm.
And I'll submit on it, you know, like these guys asked me to do it. And I was like, all right. And I really understood what to do. And I submitted it and I won that bid. Well, what am I going to do now? And I was like, whoa, I was kind of nervous. And then all of a sudden, like it kind of became a little bit too good to be true. And it was like people in the higher ed company split ways. They had their own like weird combustion. And the freaking head of the whole department like called me up and he was like, hey man, he's like, I'm impressed. He's like, I left for this and this and this reason, but I'm impressed. And I would love to like try to work with you, you know?
Huh.
And I said, well, I'd love to tell you that I was the only one on the team that bid for that project.
So they didn't know.
No.
They didn't know.
Oh my
No.
gosh.
That's awesome.
And he's like, well, now I want to work with you
Even
for fucking sure. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, it's like it wasn't, freaking bullshit. And I mean, I know I have all those people I can put into action. It's not like I'm going to try to run that kind of campaign by myself. It's just that everyone convinced me to do it and people, friends, and,
Yeah.
the actual company was like, I want you in on this deal. It's only 3 companies bidding. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Yeah. And, I felt like we could add value and I knew I could, that's not a good lesson to teach, young people to do that. But I had 15 people ready to deploy for
Right,
this. It's
for
just, it was
sure.
just the timing
Definitely.
more than anything,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think it's
I know.
another example of throwing yourself in the fire a
Oh
little bit.
shit,
and
dude,
then
it was
going.
crazy, man. It was crazy. No one's ever heard these stories, man.
Oh.
But I don't really care. I mean, they're true. And so I worked with him. My friend Shane is his name. And we went and shopped this new agency, just Premise Plus,
Mhm.
We shopped it to a lot of companies and a lot of people were interested. And I had talked to several brands about what I was doing and they were pretty cool to work with us if they had openings. And then I met Cindy and Keith White and I felt like they were more just not like me, but they were more like, they weren't super small, but they weren't really big. And they were more like understood what it took. And it was kind of like, yeah, you can build this agency here. And then I was like, okay, we did the deal. Like obviously long story short, but we did the deal and like, I couldn't call it Premise, So I was like, that was like
exactly.
already had its time. That was already a successful
It's a
agency.
new chapter.
I need to
for
kind of
sure.
just be immersive. And then I was like, I think this whole immersive thing's good. Like it's what we do. That was exciting stuff. Just worked with Autodesk, did the whole Walt Disney World social and digital strategy for tweens with that. And we just had a lot of really cool, like some really, really innovative startups. My job was leading strategy. I mean, it was really small. It was like maximum 14 of us, minimum 9 of us. It was just all hands on deck shit. It's nice to be in that sort of that under 50, above 10 people because the magic happens in that zone.
So that's bringing us to 2016, where you started at Motivate. How did that transition happen? How did you find this opportunity?
I think that Motivate's always been really strong with multicultural LGBT, and they just started getting more and more youth requests on RFPs. And that's
Gotcha.
just how we bumped into each other based on the need.
An
What's
RFP?
RFP?
Yeah.
Request for a proposal, folks.
Gotcha.
I love the jargon. It's right when you think like all this stuff is just like normal speak.
Right.
You find out it's not. No, just proposals. Businesses who have needs, they'll issue a request for proposal. And that's how a lot of business transactions are just done. And Motivate would just receive those, and we would collaborate on some. And then, long story short, it was just became like, well, if we're going to do this stuff together, and like, would it make more sense just to do it all at Motivate? Why do it at Parker White? And I was pretty loyal to Cindy and Keith, and I was like, gosh, I don't know that, I'm not just going to like just waltz out of here. Like I didn't need to. We were still like, whatever, dealing with the peaks and valleys of that business. Just, it was still growing. But they saw that, Motivate had a little bit, bigger clientele, a little bit more focused on the same consumer focused businesses, a little bit more into growing like this. And they gave me the blessing just to go. It was a partnership there. That was a kind thing that they did for me and let me go. So that was it.
Cool. But you had the relationship because you were working together on projects with
Motivate.
Yeah,
we started working together on some projects. It made sense. So.
Now, Gregg has since left Motivate and started working on opening his own agency, Engage Youth Co. Now, Engage Youth Co. is, you guessed it, a youth marketing agency that creates relevant brand engagement for tweens, teens, and young adults. Their mission is to drive brand growth through alignment with youth culture. So they're independently owned, global in reach, and the most experienced professionals in the youth market. Some things that they do are all over intelligence, strategy, experience, and engagement. They're working with youth segment understanding and cultural insights and trend tracking reports and custom research and testing and validating all of this awesome stuff to really provide companies with the best insight they could possibly get in terms of messaging and strategy. That wraps up part 2 in the Generational Marketing series with youth brand and marketing strategist Gregg Witt. Be sure to grab a copy of his book, The Gen Z Frequency, out now. Huge thanks to Gregg for sharing his story and letting us know what a day in his life is actually like as a youth brand and marketing strategist. Do you need experience? Are you looking for an internship? Well, you can join the team and interview anyone in any industry by becoming an Experience a Diddle student interviewer. Regardless of your major or amount of experience, this is the perfect stepping stone into any internship or career. Apply to the Adiddle Army at experienceadiddle.com/students. That's experienceaditl.com/students. Thanks for listening. To find the show notes with all relevant links and photos for this series, head over to experienceadiddle.com. That's experienceaditl.com.
If you learned something in this episode, please take some time to help our mission by leaving a positive rating and review of the show. Each week, we bring you a new interview series with guests from different jobs and industries. In every series, we live a specific day in the life, hour by hour, experience the career journey, and have a discussion about what we learned. So, don't forget to subscribe.